What is ray tracing? Before talking about what ray tracing is, we must know what render means. The term rendering is the name given to the process of producing an image from one or more 2D or 3D objects placed in virtual scenes, using for this purpose a computer program. These scenes generally contain all the information required for the mathematical model to perform the necessary calculations and generate an image. See lights, textures, geometry, materials, and others. Ray tracing is just one of these mathematical models that produce images. In addition to ray tracing, there are also other models generally used in different areas, such as rasterization, used by the vast majority of current video games due to its efficiency, and path tracing, used by the first video game that attempts to emulate a 3D perspective in real time. The importance of ray tracing is not limited to being able to generate more realistic graphics or video with precise reflections and shadows, even if this has been the main driver of its advancement at the consumer level. But the importance of the development of ray tracing is measured by the technologies it carries. Let's review some. Processing power. Since its first steps, human desire and technology have moved hand in hand. The use of fire and the desire of safety on dark nights, agriculture and the development of bigger civilizations, or the poet and the desire to know what lies beyond the horizon. In this sense, the computational power has skyrocketed, scaled by the desire to compute more complex systems. Now let's think about which one of the most complex and closed systems we have. That's right. Division involves electromagnetic theory and human perception in a magnificent way. The development of computer graphics has generated an exponential increase in processing power. For example, if we compare the overall performance of one of the fastest GPU from 10 years ago with a GPU of the last generation, we measure a net increase of more than 800% performance. Notice that in an approximated way, 8 GPUs from 10 years ago were required, working in perfect coordination in parallel to even match the performance of a current GPU. But what if we can get more processing power? In these moments, it's when humanity's oldest tool, the intellect, becomes very useful. And it is that computing 100% of an image using only ray tracing will take too long. In fact, so much time that it's not longer feasible to use this technique. For this, together with the development of better ray tracing algorithms called denoisers have been developed. His task is to allow us to calculate only a fraction of the image using ray tracing, and they oversee filling the rest. In the past, these denoisers were limited to interpolating the information, but in recent years, these algorithms have begun to use the ability of machine learning to infer this missing information from an image. What is ray tracing in general terms? A simulation of the behavior of light. Thanks to the rise of ray tracing in the entertainment industry, we have been able to perform light simulations in an increasingly precise and efficient way. From a simulation of how an object will be reflected in a mirror, we have managed to recreate what a black hole will look like up close. How does ray tracing work? In real life, how does light work? In real life, the light we see behaves like a particle and a wave due to the well-known property of duality. When an object emits light, these millions of massless light particles, called photons, and their corresponding spherical waves travel through the space and can be reflected, be absorbed, or refract. What should be clear is that the light sources do not discriminate directions, so the 10 million photons fired in one direction are neither less or more important than those that go out in any other direction. After interacting with multiple objects, surfaces, and materials, this light accidentally reaches our eyes, where they oversee receiving the excitations produced by the light, while the brain processes them and gives them meaning. Ray tracing uses the same concept but in the opposite direction. Instead of forming an image from photons coming from the light source, we generate an image by defining the interaction of what we see concerning two light sources. Let's imagine an empty scene. Now let's put some objects. Now let's play a plane. This plane will symbolize the image that we want to generate from the scene. Now let's place an observer that sees through the plane towards the scene. If we take one of the pixels of the image and project a ray from the observer to the pixel and through the plane, as we see, the ray strikes the ground plane. Let's look at a simple example with this ray. Now, the point where the ray hit is in the line of sight of the scene light. If the answer is yes, we paint the pixel considering the color and intensity of the light source and the properties of the material. If the answer is no, then the point is in the shadow and should be painted black. If we repeat this process for each pixel of the image, we obtain a view of the scene using ray tracing with zero light bounces. Now, what if we took this beam and allow it to bounce a certain number of times before seeing if it was on the line of sight of light? For example, with one bounce of the ray, we can note that although the light does not hit the bottom of the sphere directly, if it hits the surface that reflects part of this light, the sphere will be illuminated. As we increase the number of rebounds of light, The results are more realistic, with part of the light reflecting off the ground towards the bottom of the sphere, and, in turn, part of the light that hits the sphere projecting toward the ground. How about we also consider the possibility that the sphere is not completely opaque? That is, we also trace rays of reflection through the sphere. Now we can see not only the shadows that the sphere casts, but we can also see what's behind it. Even if we modify the refractive index used by the rendering engine, we can simulate different materials such as well, it depends. The most affordable option today is through software. Programs like 3ds Max, Cinema 4D, and Blender include powerful built-in ray tracing engines. The biggest downside of this option is that, despite the notable improvements in recent years, it is quite slow to produce convincing results. The other option, and also the most recent, is to make use of a specialized ray tracing hardware. For example, NVIDIA RTX series includes the ability to perform these calculations in real time. And soon, AMD will launch its new Radeon RX series. This is also capable of performing ray tracing in real time. The biggest drawback for this option is at the moment its price, as the newest thing on the market. As we can see, the approach we will have with ray tracing will largely depend on whether we are willing to sacrifice or what new techniques to improve its efficiency are developed. What is clear is that the future of this technology is bright. The development and use of ray tracing as a technique to generate multimedia content has propelled the computer graphics industry to new horizons, taking with it other technologies and allowing a future in which it's impossible for us as a human to distinguish an image generated in real time by a computer of an image taken directly from reality.